One of the best, probably in my opinion, one of the best kept secrets that people don't really understand. And if they understood it and they took this thing plus a secondary thing and combined them together, it would be a superpower. And that to me is a VA loan paired with builder incentives, right?
Yeah.
So today I want to give you a deep dive. Jared is a phenomenal friend and a phenomenal partner, lending partner, can talk you through all the details. So we're going to talk everything VA loans and how we pair them with a new construction home, because I've had tons of buyers use these and they actually walk away from the table with cash.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So let's talk about the VA stuff, talk about like why we like them and why they're beneficial for men and women who've earned the right to use them to buy a house.
Yeah. First of all, it's being VA eligible, having served our country, either in active duty or reserves, and having entitlement to take advantage of the VA benefit. Right. And they are phenomenal.
Yeah. So you said, the word entitlement, I think we got to define a couple of things. So entitlement is,
once you serve, you're giving VA entitlement, which allows you to purchase a home just like anybody else, but through the VA's mortgage process, right? And it allows you to have 100% financing, so zero down.
So is that entitlement? Is there like a cap number on like, hey, I can only purchase so much home, or how does that?
There is. There's a percentage. The VA entitlement. It sounds like a much smaller number than what you can actually buy. But at the same time, there's bonus entitlement. So you can get a VA loan on a $300,000 home and put 0% down. You could get a VA loan on $1 million home and put 0% down. Yeah. So you're entitled to that 100% financing. And there's nuances to it, and there's dollar amounts.
Yeah.
But they sound smaller because there's formulas that go behind it.
Right. And so with that, so like somebody who has served our country comes in and say, hey, I want to use my VA entitlement or buying a house. So does that mean that doesn't mean I'm getting a 0% interest rate, right? That means we're still getting really good rates, and then we're compounding that with what potentially a builder is doing in a new construction space.
Yes. So some of the benefits to a VA loan is, again, 100% financing.
Okay.
So
no out of pocket.
Yeah. You don't have to put any money down. Now, normally when you're purchasing a new home, even an existing home, when you go under contract,
you're going to have a
taken off the market, you're going to have an earnest money deposit.
So you're still going to have some funds available to do that. But in most cases, you're probably getting those funds back, or a portion of those funds back, when we get to you closing a possession of that home.
I think so. Yeah. So the 0% down, and then if you compare that to other types of loans, when you're putting less than 20% down, you're going to have mortgage insurance. That's the lender's protection against default or anything like that, foreclosure. Whereas the VA loan, they've got their funding fees that go there, protect them, and there's no mortgage insurance, right? So you're putting 0 down and there's no mortgage insurance, where the counterpart might be 5% or 3.5% down, and you still have mortgage insurance on top of your principal interest payments.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but like on that funding fee, a builder can pay that, or they have?
Yes.
So
nope. So when it comes to, and let's talk about the funding fee. A funding fee is the VA's kind of insurance policy.
Correct.
It's very similar to what FHA has. It's an upfront cost. However, for the veterans who have a 10% or greater disability rating, service rated disability, they waive that. So not only is it something where they're going to allow 100% financing if you've suffered any kind of disability, that they will waive the funding fee. So you're coming in 0% down and no funding fee.
Right.
When it comes to any of those upfront costs, like a funding fee, it can be financed. Yeah. So you can technically finance 103% of the sales price. Okay. If your funding fee is 3% or more. It can also be a cost that's pulled out of the financing and set into your closing costs, and it can be paid by somebody else. So there's multiple options on that specific cost.
And I think part of the reason why I wanted to have this conversation with you is, with me selling predominantly new construction, I have a lot of veteran buyers. So we end up helping a lot of veterans. Either they're here already locally in DFW, or they've decided, hey, we're retiring to DFW, or we took a new job and they're coming to DFW. So I want to be able to educate our buyers on that. And I know your company, like Benchmark, y'all do a ton with veterans and in all of those dynamics, right? And I think there's so much misinformation out there that I think that's why this conversation is so important of like, hey, this is what's available to you that you've earned the right to use. And we want to make sure you get the full benefit of that.
Yes. So, without generalizing, veterans spend so much time being told what to do, where to be, and all of those things when they're serving. If they don't know their benefits, sometimes there's a stigma around asking, what are my benefits? What can I do? And sometimes it's easier just not to ask those questions. So the VA and our veterans are, in my opinion, substantially underserved.
I agree.
Because they might not want to ask questions for whatever stigma goes with that.
Yeah.
And then there's not a lot of people in our position that are saying, hey, don't ask, let's just give you the information.
Yeah.
You don't need to ask the question. Here's all the information you can have.
Right.
So I do think that they're underserved. And I think Benchmark realized that years ago, and we've grown our VA message to kind of get into the position where we are now with serving our veterans.
Well, and I think that's so important. And then we add in the extra layer of doing it with a new construction goal where we're already seeing builders come in and advertise incentives, closing costs, rate buydowns, stacking those things together on top of your VA benefit, I think really becomes, like we talked about, a superpower to you buying that home, right?
It does. Yeah. So, when you're talking about incentives, if you already start with a loan product that, in my opinion, has benefits that already exceed those of FHA, conventional financing, and then you've got incentives from the builder, they do compound. And, there's limits to how much a builder can contribute, or any seller, interested party contributions.
Yep.
But the VA, the way they've structured and worded their guidance on that, you actually have access to more than what is a standard conventional buyer.
Yeah. And when, people are always like, hey, how are we, funding this? How are we affording this? How are builders paying for this? And you can look at like what's an interested party contribution. And there are federal guidelines based on how much you're putting down and the loan type that go together that say this is the max amount we can use. But to your point, the VA loan has an extended tier above that, right? So there's even more opportunity in the right spaces for a deal to be had for somebody who can use a VA loan.
Correct. So, typical interested party contributions are based on down payment and MRR type. And, 6% being the general maximum. You can get 9% if you're putting a substantial amount down. But when you start looking at 6% and the requirements to get there, VA is essentially 8%. They've got 4% seller paid costs. That means as a builder or a seller, they can pay up to 4% of their costs, which is every cost, transactional cost, taxes, insurance, even including a rate buydown or discount points. Then they can give them 4% in concessions. Seller paid costs and concessions, to me, it's the builder still giving money, but on paper, they're different. So when you've got seller paying all your costs and there's nothing else left, what do you do with another 4%? You can pay off credit cards. You can pay out a lease payment. There's things that money can be done outside of the actual transaction itself, but it can also be compounded with the transaction,
which wouldn't be your case
straight down
in a normal FHA or a conventional style draft. Yeah, correct. That's, that sounds incredible, right? So obviously, if we're talking about this, there's got to be some pitfall. It's run by the government, right? So there's got to be some hiccups and pitfalls. So let's talk brief. I'm going to want to go in deep detail, but give me some of the things that like might make this process a little difficult. I know we've had some experiences with like a VA appraiser. That was kind of
hard. I would tell you that even with all of those, it's still probably the best loan mortgage product out there. There aren't really any pitfalls, but the VA, you have to be a VA certified or registered appraiser. When you go through an appraisal management company, we try to make sure we're using somebody at a macro level where it's hey, we're going to get somebody from Frisco to appraise a Frisco home. Even down to within, miles of where they might live. But the VA is more of a round robin system. You could technically have an appraiser from Waxahachie drive 2 hours to appraise a home in Salida. That's an extreme example, but you could. So you do have some small appraisal part there. And like you said, Discover, you can't rush them. I can pay extra money to get an appraisal in 2 days with somebody else. You can't rush the VA.
Well, and I think that's probably the hardest part is like sometimes we have some of our veteran buyers that we are on a deep time crunch, and it's like no matter what we do, like the government says, we'll get there.
The more you push, the longer it takes.
Yeah, and then that's where it's like, man, I feel like my hands are done. It's like, there's nothing we can do on. It's just part of the, it's the other side of this benefit.
It is, but they've got some good things that you probably
that you wouldn't get otherwise.
Correct. So like in the appraisal process, if a VA appraiser is struggling for whatever reason to find comparable homes to support the value of the house you're trying to buy, they let you know in advance. It's called a Tidewater initiative. Where that name came from, I've read it several times. It doesn't matter, but it's, hey, we're telling you today that we're having a hard time with the value that we're supposed to give you in 3 days. So it gives the builder, the seller, the lender, it gives everybody an opportunity to go back and say, hey, let's see if there's additional information that you might not have access to or might not be available to you that supports this. So we got an option there. If it still comes back low, the VA buyer is protected. They can go back to the salesperson and say, hey, we just want to cancel. We can't justify the difference.
Right.
They have the ability to pay the difference. They have the ability to renegotiate with the seller to see if there's middle ground or come down. And then something a lot of people don't know is the buyer themselves can write a letter to the VA saying, hey, I believe the home is worth this.
Yeah.
And I'm willing to pay this if I can get financing for it. And the VA can adjust the value up to that sales price.
Yeah,
based on the buyer's ability or desire to purchase them.
Yeah, I had a client that we had to do that with recently. They were buying from a builder, and we had to go through that whole Tidewater situation. And we had and come to find out, we ended up with an appraiser that had, that was, your situation of across the metro, didn't really know the area. And so we ended up having to supplement all the information. And in addition to the buyer wrote the letter, it was good. And it's so funny because it comes back and it's like, they end up like, it was like a massive swing the opposite. Like they ended up well over where we even needed them to be just by doing that reconsideration.
Yes.
So Yep. So let's do this. I want to look at the calculator real quick just to kind of show the difference. So let's just say, let's go pick a house from one of my favorite builders. Okay. Let's go look at Highland. Cause I personally, if you've watched any of the content on my channel, Highland for me is one of those builders that I love to sell. And if I can't get the website to load, I'm gonna have to pick from somebody else. But let's just go find a house that might, be something that we would look at buying, and then let's put it in the calculator to kind of get a feel for what that would be. So one of my, again, Highland, a favorite community of mine is this community down on the south side of Rockwall in Sonoma Verde. 60-foot lot section, 70-foot lot section, some beautiful, beautiful homes. But Jared, pick a house. Which one of these do you like?
589, 230.
589, 230. Okay, so if you are VA eligible, so 589, 238, right? Okay. Interest rate is not going to be 1%. Realistically, I mean, we're seeing
40. No, yeah, on their webpage.
It was on their webpage, 4.99. So let's see if we can get to that little thing.
I can say 5.
That's 5.125. So we'll estimate the high and see if I can go 4.8. Close, right? Annual taxes. So this is the important part on this one. So you were talking earlier on a rating, on a disability rating, right? If somebody is able to get 100% disability rating, that means they are not obligated to pay property taxes in the state of Texas. Correct?
Yeah, but so 100% diff. Any veteran in the state of Texas that has a 10% or greater disability will have some exemption towards
on their property tax. Correct. But it's not like it's not a 100%, 90%. It doesn't move in stair step sequentials like that.
It does not. No, there's it posted on just about any Texas appraisal district or county assessors.
Yeah,
but it's a reduction in the assessed value of the home. So I know we've talked about homestead exemptions as well. VA loans are only for primary properties. You can later move on and convert it to an investment, but to purchase, it's a primary.
Right.
So in Texas, the assumption is that with a VA loan, purchasing as a primary residence, you'll want the homestead exemption. So there's reductions in the tax value of that home. If you've got disability, it changes from 10 to 30, 30 to 50,
And then
50 to 70, 70 to 99, and then at 100%, you're exempt from all that tax.
And that to me is one of those things, like, I know, like, in having a lot of conversations with our, incoming clients, and when we talk about the VA, I always ask them, like, hey, do you have your disability right now? I know I haven't done it yet, or no, or I'm working on it. And again, I'm not a veteran, so I can't speak to the process. I just know what people have told me. Hey, it's a tedious process to go through. And I'm always kind of told our clients that, hey, if you've earned it, you need to go through and, like, you need to get it, right? I know it's a headache. I know it can be a pain, but if it makes the difference in, like, from a zeroed out tax perspective, that's significantly more buying power, correct, than what it would be if you were assuming you're paying 2% property taxes year after year. So, like, in looking at this house, and that's the other interesting piece too, is we talk about new development neighborhoods. So many of these neighborhoods have the additional, the mud tax or the PIDs, things like that. One of those is covered if you have 100%, and one of them is not. Correct? Correct. So which one?
So your PID, Public Improvement District, is generally not.
So if you bought, so like in the case of this home, so like this home in Snowbird is a 2% tax rate, which includes the 1.5 base for Rockwall, and then the difference is the PID tax. So if you were a veteran buying in this neighborhood, and you had 100% disability rating, you would eliminate the majority of your taxes, but you would still be responsible for the PID tax. If it had a mud, it would be gone. You wouldn't, correct. But in looking at that, right? So, like, let's just assume we have we're zero. We'll just kind of look at it and say, hey, it's 0.5% on your taxes at a 4.8 to a 4.99 rating. Like, you're looking at a zero down payment, so cash out of pocket is minimal, right? Correct. So buying that house at 589. Estimated monthly payment, and we're ballparking numbers, to get the official numbers, you really probably need to talk, you do need to talk to a mortgage lender. Jared's contact information is in the bottom of this video, and he and his team can walk you through absolute numbers with certainty, what it would look like in your situation. This is just ballpark numbers, what we're looking at, right? But it's interesting to see. So we're looking at 3086 roughly on a monthly payment on a VA loan. If we did that same house at 589, 236, we went with a conventional loan. We had to put at minimum 5% down, right? So the tax rate was 2%. I want slide right there. We got the same rate, 396604. So what was that? $400, $500 on that? At minimum.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, probably it's probably going to be a little bit more than that. Say if assuming you have a disability rating, and you're rolling in all of your fine. But I think the biggest thing is the roll in of all the additional fees, right? Like, craves. You could come. You have to have the money on the front end to secure the property, but most likely you're not coming out of pocket for.
Most new construction VA buyers get at least a partial refund of their earnest money.
Yes.
If not all of it, because of the incentives that most builders have right now. And it exceeds what their earnest money deposit is.
Yeah. And we're seeing that on the incentive side. That's across the board, guys. That's not a Highland thing. That's not a pace. I mean, everybody's incentives are a little bit different, right? But all of these big builders that are trying to move homes are doing something in terms of an incentive or a rate buy down or a temporary buy down. Can you do a temporary buy down as a VA buyer?
Okay.
Is there any, and they can, and the good thing with working with your team is you guys, every time I send clients over, you guys are always super diligent and showing, like, hey, here's how we can, move the rate strategically with what's going on kind of in the market. And now I know as we talk about rates, everybody's excited because they think rates are starting to dip, right? Typically on a VA rate, does that sit lower than an average nationally conventional, like, or where do you normally see the stars?
So typically, your government loans, VA, FHA, even USDA, are slightly lower than what a conventional mortgage rate would be. Typically in those, you've got some upfront costs. So you've got the guarantee fee for USDA, upfront mortgage insurance for FHA, the funding fee for VA. Those help to offset that difference. So they do start with lower interest rates. If you're funding fee exempt, then that is a huge savings.
Correct.
You start with lower interest rates, you can buy them lower, and then the VA probably has one of the best, if not the best, refinance programs out there. It's known as the IRRRL.
Like a dive.
You hear that and you think that, but it's IRRRL, interest rate reduction, restructure, or refinance loan.
Okay, explain it to me like I'm five.
It's crazy. You've got to be in the home for a specific number of days. It's just over 6 months. It is a very specific number of days. There has to be a net tangible benefit, or your payment has to be reduced. But the government, or I should be more specific, the VA, for some reason, is the only one that's figured out that if you're a veteran, you are in a VA loan, you're already making payments and you have not missed any payments. You're on time. And the interest rate or the payment is going to go down through a refinance. The assumption is, well, that's a good thing. You're already making this payment. We're going to lower it for you. They don't stick you through the entire refinance process where it's, hey, let's make sure you still qualify. Let's say, it's streamlined. There's a lot less paperwork, a lot less proving that I'm still worthy of this payment.
Yeah, interesting.
It is phenomenal.
That's super. So like,
yep. Anybody else that refis and they want to make sure you have the same job, same income, same assets, same error. It's prove that you still qualify, where the VA says, well, you made the payment on the 1st and we're refinancing you on the 15th. Does anything change? No. Great. Let's go.
It's probably that assumption of like just the discipline that's there, and that's it. So if let's say you lock in at a 4.99 rate and the crazy thing happens and rates get better, which I don't believe that we'll get
6 months. Gotta wait, you think? But in the refinance.
No, in the refinance. Yeah. That to me is that's huge. I didn't even know that. Like IRRRL. IR
interest rate reduction refinance loan.
Okay.
Yep. Like that.
That's it. I appreciate that. Anything we met as we're talking about this loan again and pairing it against a new construction home. And I talked about the benefits at length of a new construction home. Like, hey, we're not buying somebody else's problem. We're, you're getting an asset that nobody has lived in. And again, new doesn't mean perfect. New just means new. Like any other benefits we're missing as we pair these two things together, we need to probably hit.
No, you've covered it. We've got, tremendous benefits, upfront savings, interest rate reductions that somebody else might be paying for, the ability for somebody to help you structure your finances by paying off credit cards or debts to get it into a home. Yeah.
That's all part of the fun of the negotiating with the bill. All right. I mean, that's the world that I get to live in of, hey, we need to find some things to where we can move money to make sense for them to buy the house. Right. And then on your end, you're looking at say, hey, where can we get them on the payment based on what they qualify for with their, job, or what about, okay. So curiosity and maybe this is not the right place to say. What about we have a lot of clients that are like recently retired, that are like, they're transitioning out of the military. They know they're in their 6-month window if they're about to leave, but they're not really sure what the next job is yet. Right. How's the VA look at that in terms of like, hey, we need to find a housing situation?
The biggest part about any mortgage approval is the ability to repay.
Correct.
It is the number one thing that came out of the Mortgage Act. Yes, is the ability to repay. So they do look at job stability and changes. Somebody that's separating from the military usually comes out with a necessary skill.
Right.
Their job or what they've been trained for in the military is relatable to the private sector. So they're highly employable. We would still want to have some kind of information about what's next, because the income in the military, if we know there's an end date, right, Separation date, 6 months is a short time frame when you're looking at a 30-year mortgage. So it's true that there's still the affordability. So we look at that. We help people with that.
Yeah, I knew what the answer was going to be on that, but I just also wanted to set it up from the standpoint of if you're watching this and you're looking at making that transition, and Texas is one of those places you think you're going to end up. Like, it's not too early to start having that conversation. Whereas, like, we can, especially if you're looking at a build, right, and you're going to go through the process with a builder, build the house that you want. We can navigate that conversation with some sort of intelligence of, hey, like you said, there's a highly employable person. There's a plan there in place to what you're going to need next.
Yeah, and there's a lot of things that can run simultaneously and overlap. A 6-month build job for 6-month separation and job, those can go together. They don't have to be one after another linear where we start today and we close in a year. Those 6 months can overlap. And
to me, that's the biggest benefit of working with a company like Benchmark that does so much for our men and women who have qualified for a B loan, because you guys know all of the ins and outs on how to navigate those things and make those things work, and ultimately put them in a situation where they're going to win.
Yeah.
So,
yep.
This is the men I like. So to wrap it up, if you are qualified and eligible to use a VA loan, it is probably the best tool out there. And then again, compound that with what we're seeing the builders do with some of these interest rates and the closing costs and the price reductions, especially on inventory right now. And so with that, like, if you served 10 years ago and you've retired for 10 years, you're still VA eligible, right? It's like, you don't lose that.
You don't lose it.
If you're not using it, you should be. And if you have questions, we would love to have a conversation with you. Jared's contact information is down below. My contact information is on the screen. If we can help in any way, whether you are buying from the ground up, whether you're building from builder's inventory, whether you are here in DFW or you are trying to get to DFW, we want to be a resource to you guys. So appreciate your time. We will see you in our next one. Thanks.
That was good.